So from the perspective of the hybrid model, it's not as cut and dry as this makes more on seller than vendor when we model it. You should move it. There are external factors like Amazon. If you have a really high performing SKU with vendor, Amazon don't want you moving that to seller because they want the revenue that comes in from that being a high performing SKU. So you've got to be a bit more selective. You can use 3P as leverage. You can say, right, I'm launching this new product, because that's another thing, vendor. When you launch a new product, Amazon has no backlog of data to know how many to order, because you can say that you're going to get 300 units sold in the next 3 months, but Amazon has no way of identifying that if it's a new product. So you can use it to your advantage in that you can open a new SKU, sell via seller using that SKU for 3 months. Amazon gets the data, and then you have a bit more leverage with Amazon, moving that to 1P eventually. But then you can also do things like maybe you have a tertiary SKU, one that doesn't drive your volume as much, but one that is getting to the point where your margin is getting eroded so much, it's probably not really profitable to have it on Amazon if you're going to do it on vendor. And then from that perspective as well, if you say that to your vendor manager, there's an understanding both ways. It's not just your vendor manager wants more and more margin from you. They understand that you need to make money as well. Obviously, they will squeeze you. But if it becomes a point where there's no margin to share between Amazon and yourself, they'll understand if you move that to 3P. So you can also do it where you can just completely give up on vendor, but sometimes contractually that can be an issue. If Amazon and your category lead as your vendor manager, if you're a key contributor to that category, they don't want you leaving, and they can suppress buy boxes and things like that if you just move everything to seller. So it's about being nuanced in terms of how can we do this in a controlled manner, but also in a manner that works with Amazon still, but also at the end of the day, what we're doing at the moment, maybe the margin isn't really viable long term because it's only going to compress further. So it's just about fixing your foundations essentially, because we all know the way the business is trending at the moment. It's just less margin for everyone.
Very true. And on vendor side, I saw a post on LinkedIn recently. They done some tests and everything, and what they have done is that they have the same ASIN on different one and different periods.
Yeah.
And vendor was more profitable.
Yes.
To get the same sales on the seller side, they have on 3P, they have to use advertising, and still they were not able to match up on vendor without advertising.
Sorry, was that from the perspective of their volume of sales in terms of
volume of sales? Yeah.
So their total revenue. Yeah. So vendor also you pay into something called the marketing development fund as one of your fees you pay, and there are other fees that kind of push this as well, but that will essentially mean that vendor products do usually list higher up the search rankings. So it will push your volume a bit more in that way. But then also from the same perspective, if you move to SKU to seller because there was a potential 10% uplift, you could then move 5% of that margin uplift into ad budget. And then it becomes a bit more difficult to understand the granularity of that, because you could say, well, I put 5% more into my ad budget. Is that not then going to push my revenue up as well? And I have the 5% extra for every sale I make anyway. But this is what we look into essentially. We're looking to, you can't just make an emotionally informed decision or a gut feeling decision with all this, because there's so many interconnected parts. You need to be across from the data. I need to understand, if I do this, what's the effect of this going to be? And then understand the risk involved with that. And if it's not a risk reward trade-off that's viable, it's just not worth doing.